Our very first panel discussion, the topic for this panel discussion is Government Summit, State of Blockchain Regulation in Asia. And we will have 6 to 7 distinguished guests on stage and share their opinions with the audiences here today. Now, when I read your name, can you please also proceed onto the stage? First of all, let's welcome our moderator, Angie Lau, Forkast.News founder and CEO. Welcome, Angie. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let us welcome Joshua Ashley Klayman, Klayman founder and CEO. Welcome. And next, let us welcome Jason Shu, again, member of Parliament, Legislator and Crypto Congressman in Taiwan. 好，我们徐玉妍委员待会儿呢也会一同到台上来进行分享。那么紧接着要为大家介绍的就是 Naokazu Takemoto, member of the House of Representatives for Osaka Congressman here in Japan. Please proceed on to the stage. Welcome. 那么最后一位呢，要来欢迎的就是 Chia Hock SFA Chairman. Good morning. 好，我们现在呢，跟我们的与会嘉宾呢，现在全部呢都是在台上了。那么待会儿呢就会进行今天的第一场高峰论坛。And now I'm gonna pass it on to our moderator Angie, and now let the panel discussion begin.
Wonderful, thank you. We also have Jason Shu, I believe, who's also coming up on the panel, is he not? Okay, we will take it from here. Good morning, everybody. How's everyone doing today? We're going to kick things off. It's been a very interesting month, year in cryptocurrency and digital assets in blockchain. But of course, we all remember that this started in 2008, right after the global financial crisis. And now here we are, more than 10 years later, and we are discussing whether central banks are going to create their own cryptocurrency, their own digital assets. Cryptocurrency is now on the conversation and the lips of policymakers and thought leaders and governments around the world. As we discussed, Facebook. Good morning, Jason. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. And now we're also going to welcome Director of Japan Security Token, Mr. Kato Ochi. A round of applause, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to switch seats with the special advisor? Kevin Kato Ochi is the special advisor with the congressman here. Maybe if they could sit together. Chia, is that okay? We're just going to do a little logistics shuffling. It's all for you anyway.
Yeah, Jason. Okay.
Look at that. I love.
It's called the melody chair.
It's musical chairs.
Chair.
Okay. And now that we're all comfortable. So let me just introduce myself, and I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves as well and what we're all doing in blockchain. So my name is Angie Lau. I'm editor-in-chief, CEO, and founder of Forkast.News. And this is a new global media agency that is designed to cover all things blockchain, cryptocurrency, and DLT. I am a former Bloomberg television anchor. I've spent 20 years in journalism. And I believe that our future is being told as we speak. And it is, I believe, our duty, my duty as a journalist, to really translate the stories that are evolving around us to a mainstream audience around the world. And that's what I'm doing in blockchain. And right next to me is Joshua Ashley Klayman. Please introduce yourself to the crowd. What are you doing in blockchain?
Thanks. I've been asking myself that question for years. Yeah. So I got into this space when I was at a global law firm, and I started several years ago and led for multiple years our global blockchain practice before starting out on my own. So I have Klayman LLC, which is a law firm, and also Inflection Point Blockchain Advisors, which is a consulting firm. I also chair the legal working group of the Wall Street Blockchain Alliance, and I also write for Forbes about blockchain and crypto.
Thank you. Congressman.
As you know, my name is Jason. I'm a legislator member of Parliament here in Taiwan, and I focus on developing progressive legislation for cryptocurrency and developing countrywide policy for blockchain technology and innovation.
Thank you.
My name is Takemoto, and I used to be a Vice Minister of Finance almost 10 years ago. And at that time, I felt something, the yen or dollar, this kind of money had something to not to solve some problem. For example, sending money to other country, it costs too much. In order to resolve those problems, the cryptocurrency appeared. I think so.
Hi, my name is Kevin K. Ochi. I still am a political pundit back home in Tokyo, in Japan, on a national TV. I also help facilitate the crypto blockchain legislative organization, along with which Congressman Takemoto chairs. And I'm also director at the Japan Security Token Business Association. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Hi, my name is Hock. I'm the founding president of the Singapore FinTech Association, one of the world's largest FinTech association with more than 330 corporate members and international partnerships in more than 35 countries. And many of you will have known that Singapore is one of the leading FinTech hubs, but we are also fast becoming the next financial blockchain hub. Just over the weekend, the Bank of International Settlements just announced that they are setting up their innovation hub in Singapore. And as we know that central bank digital currency is one of the hot things, and that Singapore is a leading proponent in this space. Hope to share more with you later. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So we have Singapore, we have Japan, we have Taiwan, and we have the US. This is really a global space. Everyone is talking about, let's start there, Facebook Libra, even though this cryptocurrency digital asset space has been fraught with a lot of players and a lot of projects and a lot of platforms. And yet all of a sudden, it reaches a very mainstream level because tech giants led by Facebook is now talking about putting the Libra project for a global consumer base in 1 year's time. Josh, I want to start with you. As an attorney from the US, where are you seeing Facebook Libra in terms of changing the conversation in the US and around the world?
So thank you. And by the way, nothing I say is legal advice or investment advice. I think with Facebook and with Libra, I think it's really opening up the conversation, and people are starting to take very seriously in the US, even those who may have doubted things. The idea that blockchain and crypto are for real, and that it is not just smaller emerging companies that are going to want to have a piece of it. One important thing I will just say, and I must say, in the US, we definitely see Asia as being a dominant force in this space. I would like to note that with respect to US regulations, and I'm sure we may touch on some of the things in a moment or later, but one of the challenges is that people say, okay, well, Facebook, based, in the US, that they're concerned about WeChat and the dominance of companies like that. But the thing is, because of some of the challenges with US regulations, Libra Association is in Switzerland. It's not even in the US. So I think that says a lot.
It says a lot. It's based in Switzerland, but at the same time, if it's going to tap into US base, it still has to apply US regulatory law from the SEC to the CFTC and everyone in between. And there is a huge debate right now as to whether or not it's a currency or it's a security. Is it driving innovation to Asia? I mean, that's certainly what it feels like. Josh?
I think in many ways it is, to Asia and to Europe, frankly, to all sorts of places where the US is not. As many of you may be aware, and some may not, but happy to fill you in, a lot of the regulations in the US, particularly around securities, they're transaction-based or principal-based. They're not based on the actual characteristics of the digital asset themselves, as they may be in certain other countries and jurisdictions. So what that means for those, even companies that may be located in Asia, if you're dealing with US persons, either as customers or as users of your service, you need to be wary and knowledgeable about US laws because they may apply. So I would say just in my personal practice, there are many great projects where they're just avoiding the US entirely.
And they're setting up base in Taiwan, in Japan, in Singapore. What is this flood of interest that is coming to Asia as a result of what feels like a stricter regulatory environment in the US?
I think the announcement of Libra is in general a boost to this industry. What we have seen in this industry for the past, 24 months is a lack of mainstream participation. And what's been lacking is actually the official recognition of the industry's legitimacy. What happened for a platform like Facebook, who is actually widely recognized and it's been verified, tested, make an entry to this space. Whether or not it will be successful is another story, but I think in general it's a boost to this industry. And certainly I'm hopeful that its experiments can be more all-encompassing and make it an actual platform and a tool set for financial inclusion. However, interestingly, when Facebook announced Libra, I happened to be in Washington, D.C. I had been in the D.C. at the time for a delegation visit. I actually met with members of the Congress, member of the House, and members of the Senate, and who actually expressed their concern over the overreaching power of Libra. And what ended up following is the announcement of the U.S. Congress calling for hearing, and the EU Parliament and other countries, lawmakers and legislators calling for Libra to stop its development. So I think I wouldn't see it as a negative signal. I actually see it as a wake-up call for this community to really stand up and then get your regulations ready and complete. Now, 2019 will be the year of regulation. And then get ready, because this industry is about to go mainstream. So I'm bullish, and I think it just in general in politics, politicians are disconnected with technology, except me. I think we need to provide the politicians more opportunities for education and communication with the industry, and help politicians to create better laws, better regulations that would end up, providing the win-win solution for the general public, the protection of consumer, as well as the industry and the national interest.
So one of the news that coming out of Taiwan is FFC's decision on STO and providing that regulatory guidance. There has been pushback, however, from the community saying that 30 million NTD is not enough. It's not even a Series A that allows projects to healthily fundraise. Is this the kind of regulatory guidance that is a little bit of an imbalance to what the community says that it needs? And how do you balance that?
Yeah, I think unfortunately the step that the FSC is taking is rather conservative. And FSC, as I shared last Friday, published a set of guidelines stipulating the STO issuing. And there's been a lot of concern that this is a rather smaller scale and is lacking enthusiasm from the community. I would call this as a pilot program. And I think over time that we are receiving, or at least FSC is receiving feedback from the community, and then calling for the adjustment of the scale, and as well as the openness to the general participation. And certainly I'm standing on the opposite side of this rather conservative set of guidelines, and I will continue to work and strive to push for an open up of a more inclusion and a more global-facing set of rules that will be modified in the months to come.
Takemoto-san, do you think that Japan is also trying to help lead the way? It was very interesting at the G20 that we first had this cryptocurrency conversation amongst global leaders. Can you tell us a little bit more about where Japan hopes to provide leadership in this kind of regulatory minefield?
To tell the truth, our country, Japan, is just a developing country as far as the cryptocurrency is concerned. That's my impression. Taiwan, Singapore, United States, all of those countries, the advanced country, judging from this viewpoint. Okay? To tell the truth, when we discuss about the cryptocurrency, some of our legislation quite against, should be prohibited. That's one faction of our legislation. But we are not that opinion. If it's useful for our economy, we should use that. However, in order to prevent some defect, such kind of money laundering or the money flow, in order to prevent those things, we have to invent some scheme. So, therefore, 2 years ago, we have voluntary controlling organization we established. And some of the members, as a member of this organization, they are doing their own business. However, ICO has some problem still. So, we are going to invent STO. It's supported by the asset. This is a new idea, I think. We are going to enlarge this kind of scheme in Japan. In order to do that, we have to study so many things from foreign countries.
Yes. What are you seeing in Japan?
So Japan positioned itself as at least we're trying to be a leader in this sector, this cryptocurrency, virtual asset sector. Japan takes pride in becoming the first country to implement virtual asset registration policy. And many of the FATF, Financial Action Task Force regulations, the updated ones were under the influence of Japanese policies. So there are some, for example, there are like AML, well, MMs is pretty much is like common sense, but CFT, CDD, CTR. CDD stands for Customer Due Diligence, STR stands for Suspicious Transaction Report and Registration. And those are the new updated regulation that FATF is trying to implement, and they are something that Japan has recommended. And we believe that we have a sort of like a leading policy within the cryptocurrency or VA community. But I certainly think that Libra is a game changer because it really stood up against the existing banking system and the vested interests that are pretty much out there. But then it also raises a question of what exactly asset is when it comes to what I'm sure tech giants like Google and these other players will probably jump in after Facebook, I believe, but then it also raises a question of what are they going to be trading. Now, Google and Facebook also was under the investigation by the Congress and Senate that they had these data, datas or like data breach issues, and then people were also selling data on Facebook, and those are the things that are they assets? Are they commodities? Are they going to be trading that, or are they simply going to be another Rakuten or eBay? Or those are the things that, and then also if they run on their own platform, are they going to be calling this a utility token, or what exactly is a utility token? There's still unclear. There's an unclear definition on security. Under Japan, under FSA, security tokens are regulated under the Payment Settlement Act, whereas security token are actually under the regulation of security law, or financial instrument and exchange law. So there are two different legal system that regulates, and there's a divide between these two sets of crypto, a blockchain platform, utility and security. So those are the things that we need to discuss with Jason and with other panels, I guess.
And in Singapore, SGX, MAS, I was just there a couple of weeks ago, and Subnento Gupta is talking about, blockchain for the Monetary Authority in Singapore. How is that also shifting the environment of innovation in Singapore as you see it?
I view the announcement by the Facebook as positive. I think it will accelerate conversations among regulators to provide regulatory certainty on cryptocurrency. Because let's agree that with regulatory certainty, you improve the standard, the trust, and eventually attract more institutional interest into the space of blockchain and cryptocurrency. And even before the announcement by Facebook, I see that quite a number of countries in Southeast Asia are already instituting regulations and legislation around cryptocurrency, notably Philippines, Thailand, even Malaysia. In Philippines, I understand there are more than 40 crypto exchange licenses being issued already. So I think all these are good, and a lot of the regulations are about protecting consumer interests, like segregating of customer accounts, strengthening the cybersecurity measures, and of course fighting financial crime, like having the proper KYC process so that AML and CFT can be better strengthened. So I think overall it's good for the industry, even though we might not know whether Facebook Libra will be successful. But one thing for sure, Singapore early this year we just passed the Payment Services Act, and definitely if it is payment tokens for Libra, they will require to apply for a payment license in Singapore.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, one of the most fascinating debates that are emerging on stage in this audience and around the globe is whether or not we do open source, peer-to-peer, in the purest sense of what blockchain was derived to be, versus closed system that is controlled by central banks around the world, which arguably gave us the very almost nearly catastrophic capital event that occurred more than 10 years ago. Are we going to position ourselves this way again with digital assets? Where is this balance between control from regulators and what a global economic system is demanding, which is decentralized, peer-to-peer, without manipulation? How do you balance that here on stage?
I think that's a huge challenge. I mean, certainly within the US, regulators are tasked with competing goals, right? They're supposed to basically foster innovation and not prevent it, at least. They're supposed to be technologically neutral in terms of their regulation, but at the same time, they have to protect consumers. They have to protect retail investors, the Main Street investors, who may not have the financial wherewithal or the investing sophistication to figure things out. And then when you layer on top of that some of the other crises like opioid crises and other types of challenges in terms of illicit uses, I think it's really tough for regulators. But I do think that we are seeing again and again that people want this, even with respect to, for example, ETFs, exchange-traded funds and exchange-traded products in the US. I mean, they haven't been approved yet, right? And the rationale in part is market manipulation concerns, but also to protect retail investors. But retail investors are clamoring for this, right? They can already gain exposure to it directly by purchasing things on an exchange, digital assets directly. So I think it's not something that I can solve, but it certainly is a difficult balancing act.
Well, there's no doubt regulators got in the act when ICOs exploded, and where more than 90% of the projects that raised money through ICOs, a lot of retail investors got hurt. There's no doubt the regulatory language got much more strict. But are we in this nexus right now where there is a danger of taking over innovation instead of allowing innovation to flow freely?
So one of the largest concerns in this industry is how is transaction being used and where is it used for, and who is it transacted to. And so financial regulators and the legislators around the world are concerned about the bad actors doing bad things. And certainly, I think there is a fine line between disruptive technology and responsible innovation. And we need to strike a balance between the two. So one of the things that I think I recently been paying a lot of attention is the FATF's ruling, which just came out on June 22nd. They had an annual meeting in Orlando, Florida, in the United States, basically ask all member countries to start regulating FASPs. FASPs is financial virtual asset service providers, which means anything related to cryptocurrency, including exchanges and other related services. In Taiwan, we're actually ahead of FATF. In November last year, I proposed the amendment to the anti-money laundering law to include virtual assets into the AML law, which we've already conducted a wide range survey and pretty sophisticated onboarding KYC procedures for this industry. So I think whether or not regulators will embrace it, I think this money laundering, this financial crime or terrorist financing topics must be addressed. And it is up to this community and certainly people in this room to stand up for the challenges and to really provide the solutions and mechanism and collaborating with regulators in your own country to make this a safe and a sustainable and long-term developing environment for the industry and for the people who use the service and its tool for the good of humanity.
Thank you, Jason. I think Singapore is very interesting as well because it's not only what's happening in Singapore, it's also a gateway to Southeast Asia. And so we have Indonesia, we have Thailand, we have a really incredible population of close to 1 billion people for Southeast Asian countries. How is cryptocurrency being thought of in a regulatory sense in Southeast Asia? And is Singapore providing that guidance to a degree in which you're comfortable?
Yeah, okay. For example, like in May last year, our regulator came out with a consultation paper on the recognized market operator, streamlining it, splitting it into 3 tiers to encourage more innovative exchanges like STO exchanges to come on board. And just last month, we have the first applicant into our regulatory sandbox, which is STO player. So we continue to be open and progressive in all this, hoping to provide some kind of benchmark for the neighboring countries. Indonesia is definitely a very interesting country. In early this year, they classify cryptocurrency as a commodity. And of course, they still banned payments of cryptocurrency. But I think this is a country of 260 million population. Every year, 5 million in newborn babies. In next 3 to 5 years, it will be a very interesting country to be in. Thailand continues to be quite progressive in this space. They are the first to regulate ICOs in May last year. And even in August last year, they allow bank subsidiaries to be involved in crypto activities. And early this year, I think they issued 3 crypto exchange licenses and 1 broker license and 1 dealer license. Philippines, obviously for Philippines, they have a lot of domestic helpers overseas. So crypto is for remittance place is critical to them. In 2017, they already require cryptocurrency players to apply for license under their remittance and transfer regime. And to date, they already have more than 40 licensed crypto exchanges. And just mid of last year, August and December, they provide more certainty on how to conduct ICO, and they even have a special economic zone to encourage the development of what they call as the crypto value of Asia in this Kayagan area. And hope that, and they even created a self-regulatory organization to facilitate the development of the crypto industry in the Philippines. So, and for Malaysia, they took a different approach. Early this year, they have a blanket ban and then classify all ICOs as securities. And then they require all tokens arising from ICO activities to be listed on recognized market operator exchanges. And I think this month they just issued 3 licenses for their crypto exchange. So as you can see, in Southeast Asia, these jurisdictions, they recognize the potential of the cryptocurrency and blockchain industry, and they are already providing more regulatory certainty to drive the adoption of this industry. So in general, I think it's good, and I welcome more crypto and blockchain players to set up their base in Singapore, because all the Southeast Asia countries are within 4 hours flight from Singapore. So Singapore provides a very good base for them to operate if they are interested in the Southeast Asia region. Thank you.
One of the most interesting things I think about blockchain and cryptocurrency and digital assets is the ability for nations that adopt it to leapfrog economically onto the global world stage. How are you seeing it for Taiwan? How are you seeing, well, Japan is a developed nation already, but for those in Southeast Asia and those across Asia, how are you seeing this leapfrog effect and how regulators and policymakers can encourage or participate in that?
So obviously in Taiwan, we are doing a holistic approach. So not only we developed probably the Asia's first STO regulatory framework, although which is a little bit conservative, but we will make modification over time. But we are also addressing blockchain as a policy driver. We are now developing different implementations across public, academic, and the private sector. For example, we will be issuing a new national EID, which is our digital identity system, which will consolidate our healthcare data, social security data, and all sorts of different data, so that the different government departments can talk to each other on this platform. So we treat this mechanism or tool as an enabler, which we'll use to enable industries to adopt this technology, particularly industries that are already serve as the strength for Taiwan. For example, our ICT industry, our semiconductor industry, our hardware industry that are the integral part of the blockchain ecosystem. When 5G finally comes, how can we make a decentralized computing an essential part of every device that we use, and making the transaction of the value and the information easily accessible to everyone and every corner to the world. So in Taiwan, we treat this as an experiment, and we also see Taiwan as a lab for innovation. And we wanted to open up for the globe to participate and come here, experiment, and then scale up to the rest of the world.
Great.
Well, in order to prevent money laundering, we are thinking of, however, to tell the truth, a few years ago, we enacted the so-called social security number. This is for all the people of Japan. However, only 20% are utilized. Therefore, it's not so effective. Judging from this fact, I think, for example, the same code, name, birthday, or something like that, all the people, all the enterprise can have those information. Then there is no risk for money laundering, I think. However, to tell the truth, Japan, in case of our country, main bank, big bank, Mitsubishi was such something, has so many information compared with the local bank. Therefore, if the local bank can make a loan to some people, but these people, if he has some defect, local bank don't know like that. But the big bank, mega bank, knows everything. Therefore, they never make a loan to those people. Such a difference we have. Therefore, even if those new systems are invented, it's very difficult to apply to all the people, all the enterprise. That's what I feel like that. Therefore, some people keep some asset in Hong Kong or some. I heard so many things. However, it's still a very difficult thing. But we should do that. We should do that.
Well, it's a very ironic thing in that we do have regulation shopping. We have projects who are trying to look for the most comfortable regulatory environment to foster and nurture innovation, which means that when you're slightly too conservative or you're too highly regulated, there is a danger of a brain drain. I wonder, Josh, as you advise clients and projects from around the world, it's so fragmented. Is it a commodity? Is it a utility token? Is it a security? Is it is it a currency? And so how do you provide guidance as you take a look at this global landscape and all of the regulators who are either doing this in a silo or, in regions like Southeast Asia and or together, just, on stage, Japan and Taiwan, how do you navigate this very fragmented regulatory landscape?
So, number one, I don't do it alone, right? There are many different types of crossing laws, as you mentioned,
Yes.
many of which can apply at the same time. From the U.S. perspective, as you noted, a digital asset could be a commodity, a security. The IRS says it's property. FinCEN says it may be the same as money. I think one of the challenges is if you're going to involve the U.S., you can't do it halfway, right? You need to really have someone run down all of the issues for you, and that may be expensive and it may be time-consuming. But in the event that you comply with a number of regulations, but you miss some, that doesn't absolve you of the need to comply from the regulator's views. So I think that's why a lot of projects, at least at the outset, in many cases, if they're selling digital assets, they try to exclude the U.S. I definitely think that regulators and legislators within the U.S. are trying to make certain changes, and I don't want to take up too much time. I'll just say this last thing. A lot of times we hear in the U.S. that people are searching for additional clarity, particularly under the securities laws, but other laws as well. And I think And I've been saying this for a while. I think they're not really looking for clarity. I think the regulators have been clear that a lot of laws apply. People are looking for different answers. They're looking for legislators to make laws. And that's why I think what you guys are discussing here is so powerful. And what you mentioned, Jason, earlier about the need for new laws.
The right answers are evolving. The right answers are the wrong answers when different questions arise, which happens every other day here in this industry. And so how do you keep up? Our regulators, our policymakers, our politicians, enabled intellectually, professionally, with experience, to have these conversations with authority.
Turn it off. So a cryptocurrency, or VA, virtual assets, by nature, the fact that it runs on blockchain means being decentralized. That itself already means that it's totally unconventional and very difficult. It's a different animal. It's hard to regulate. Decentralized means hard to regulate. That's what it means by nature. So, as I mentioned, in Japan, security tokens and utility tokens are falling under different category. Security tokens are under Financial Instruments Exchange Act, which is securities law, and Payment Service Act rules the utility tokens. But then, what if somebody decides to use utility tokens to buy securities? What happens then? And what if there's a derivative product involved? Then it really gets messed up, and regulators are like pretty much racking their head to find out to solve this problem. But it's a different animal, and it's very difficult to regulate. And this is why when Facebook made its claim, when they made the announcement that they're releasing this new platform, that is actually going to, basically rock the world. And I thought it was a game changer because of that.
Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for this, the start of this conversation to kick off the many, many conversations that you will be having over the next 2 days at the Asia Blockchain Summit. I want to thank each and every one of our respected panelists from around the world for joining us. And I think that this conversation really kicks off something very important that we must ask ourselves. As digital currency arises with central banks trying to figure out how they too can issue digital currency, is that the same as decentralized cryptocurrency, where we have very finite amount and it is peer-to-peer and it is completely decentralized? That, I think, is an emerging debate of which you'll continue. So thank you very much.